united activists, if there is no way of connecting them, you will not achieve change. That is the reality. I've done this for 30 years, 40 years, maybe some of you know that longer, and this is my conclusion.
So Occupy must also go against weapons to...
Did I say that?
No.
I can't remember that. I can't remember saying that.
You have a creative manner to do this, to a creative manner.
I'm sorry? Shall I go on later? Yeah, okay. My conclusion was change cannot be reached except through the nation state. You must reach the people in each state separately. Yes, an international movement, there is a good point to it, but it cannot be successful unless you change the political structures of each nation separately. On these extremely important issues, which you've described eloquently, and I cannot touch on the wonderful analyses made by both authors here of these mechanisms. I agree with them. I do not agree that the measures noted at the end of the book, and which Peter Costas has also mentioned, I do not agree that they are sufficient. You must touch on the political process, and that is my major point. There is another mechanism, and I fear it is a negative one as well, and I think you should face it as well. It was brought up best by Tony Judd, whom I'm sure you've heard of, a wonderful social democrat, philosopher, who wrote the book Ill Fares the Land, and he described it as the degeneration of the collective idea and how it has to be saved, this collective idea. This touches on the matter which I was mentioning just now of having to win this battle politically. That is also a matter of changing the idea of the individual losing towards the collective. And Judd describes in wonderful detail the way that we have been giving up the collective for the individual, the fragmentation of society, of all industrialized societies in the United States, in Europe, certainly. And it is one of the most important tasks of any movement which is to have a success, is to reverse that. Or else we shall land up, well, as Oliver Goldsmith, who Tony Judd quotes, wrote in 1770 in his poem The Deserted Village, "Ill fares the land, to hastening ills a prey, where wealth accumulates and men decay." I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you very much for your contribution. I think we have enough ideas from our panel members and from Vijay Mehta to start a debate. And I would like to ask for the first question, or maybe we can have several questions. Who would like? Yes?
Maybe you forgot something.
What?
As president of the Dutch World Federalist Movement...
Dat jij pas veel later.
Oh, I would be at the end. Yeah, sorry.
Ik dacht dat jij na de vraag...
Well, let us do this first, maybe. Maybe it's not democratic, but since we have the quorum of our board, I would like to see if Ton, Marjolein, Floris, and Leonard agree that anyone who buys the book that we launched today and sends an email to the Dutch World Federalist, you can pick up a card, gets compensation of a discount of €5 when you send it, and it will be, and you give your bank account. Do you agree? I hear yes, so that's agreed. Since I have something of content to say, I would like to do that before the debate, because war is always fought with cash at the beginning, man, and facts on the ground afterwards. One of the facts on the ground in this magnificent village, the capital, legal capital of the world, is that at the Waalsdorper Vlakte, at the dunes outside, Rietveld imagined a peace village. However, we now have a NATO C3 installation there. let me come to the speech, what I had written. It is with pleasure and gratefulness that I'm here to make some remarks on this press conference. The topic of the book, written by Vijay Mehta, The Economics of Killing, is grave. The death of a fellow human being in the execution of a military or counter-terrorist action is never joyous and never a glorious event. A wooden plate on the wall of our office at the Laan van Nieuwest, India 252, in this municipality, reads, "When one part of humanity is struck, all parts tremble in sympathy." The plate was a donation from the Iranian World Federalists. This severe topic needs the attention of vigilant, well-informed and alert citizenship. The role of the free and independent press and media is crucial, as well as academics and political parties, not to forget non-governmental organizations. In his speech of January the 17th, 1961, which you can find on YouTube and is worth looking at, the then outgoing President of the United States of America focuses on the military-industrial complex in his federation, not on that in other parts of the world. And he says that it is a monster that could threaten world peace. To my mind, we as globalists have to face today not only one military-industrial complex, but several. As in the same speech, then President Eisenhower said, we as United States, we need a military-industrial complex because before the Second World War, we were a people of making plows, and we had to improvise, turning that into a war economy. And we need to have a vigilant military and working military-industrial complex in place. And I think that reasoning is also in China, in Russia, in Iran, in Israel, in India, and what have you. These military-industrial complexes could be compared to fiefs in the Middle Ages, each having its own territory, men, women, and arms, ravaging the countryside in their unholy wars. According to Emery Reeves, in The Anatomy of Peace, the way to overcome this was to create a higher level of government above these fighting members of the noble classes. The same logic applies today, but at a higher level. That is why we unite for a world federation of states, peoples, and citizens. History shows a cycle in time of growth, flower, bear fruit, and change to the next taking relay. Today, the US in the ascending arc of the cycle, but we live in an essentially multipolar world, as has been said before. After World War II, Europe created a high authority on coal and steel. As a strategic industry, Hoogovens became British Steel became Tata Corporation, and still is Tata Corporation. I would like to add that to the debate. I'm still in the phase in my career that I'm not liberated to work on this full-time, as most of you, and I really thank the contribution that is nourishing to the debate, and I'm going to listen with intent to what's going to be said afterwards.
Thank you, Peter. Well, that was some promotion of the association I'm a member of as well, the World Federalist Movement. Now I would like to ask Vijay maybe to lead the question and answer session, take the questions, or it will go perhaps by itself. I have one question already from James, who's in the back, and Miriam Lelyveld is so kind to go to the questioners and so that they can ask their question. I think it's working. Yes. Okay.
I'm here more in my personal capacity as one of the members of the governing board of the World Federalist Movement in New York. And my name is James Williams. And I have a question and a comment. My question is to Mr. Carol Coaster, because when I studied international relations, the first book I read was the relationship between politics and economics, how dangerous it is. And both the submissions by Vijay and Peter, I totally agree, because I'm representing WFM in the UN, especially on the Arms Trade Treaty. And I want to speak just 2 minutes on that, because in terms of solution, I feel today there should be a global legally binding instrument against export of arms to non-state actors. You find wars are fought in different places. We don't know how the arms go in, basically because many of the so-called civilized democratic countries are the ones who are exporting arms. Many of these arms do not even have markings on them, so that in the eventuality of finding it, you will not be able to find out who actually did it. So therefore, the Arms Trade Treaty is now before the UN. In July, there is going to be a discussion. And there are many of us who believe that it may not be carried through because there are powerful interests around the world, which the way Vijay Mehta and Peter described, which will not let it happen. And I was part of the 2001 and 2004 delegation of the UN, and where we realized that US was arguing export to non-state actor cannot be taken away because Taiwan is a non-state actor according to the US. So therefore, we need to export arms. And even today, millions of people killed around the world, so we need a legally binding instrument. At the UN, interestingly, you will find that this was mainly pushed by many civil society actors, that there should be a legally binding instrument. The European Union is very much in favor of bringing this legally binding instrument against export of arms to non-state actor, and to bring a comprehensive treaty called as Arms Trade Treaty. Basically because of the fact that you find that 90% of the arms are exported by the members of the Security Council. And Mehta has very clearly mentioned the military mindset, which actually prevents from global negotiations. Because in the last 10 years, at least, we have seen that there are no negotiations taking place. For everything, there's only a military solution, because these arms industries are very powerful. I'm sorry, Mr. Carroll, many of our foreign ministers actually become sales agent carrying the box to sell weapons. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll, would you want to elaborate on this?
Of course. There might be a bit of a misunderstanding here. I at no point denied that there's huge influence from the military-industrial complex on politicians. Not at all. What I questioned was the way that mechanism worked and translated into foreign policy. I would, for example, a possible war against Iran has been mentioned. Now, I would suppose that Iran has a military-industrial complex itself as well. And, for instance, just to throw up a simple question, well, why wouldn't there be some kind of an international deal between the military-industrial complex of Iran and the rest? Apparently, there are more serious contradictions between the military-industrial complex of the one country and the other. And in that case, we're talking political differences. And what are they? How do these contradictions work out? That's the only question I put. I did not deny these influences are there. I do not for one moment deny that there's huge corruption, as described in your book very well and in great detail. But I do deny that there's a simplistic one-on-one relationship. A military-industrial complex leads automatically to war in each and every situation. It doesn't work that way.
One very short comment from Ms. Vijay, yeah?
Both of us?
Yes, please. Yes, a short comment, yeah.
My reaction would be simple. We are not arguing there's a one-to-one relationship. That's not the argument. The argument you should realize the power and existence of the industrial complex if you have military-industrial complex, if you want to counter it. If you want to counter it at the level of foreign policy, be aware that's not going to be an easy job. And if you are now going to argue that the nation state is a solution, you might also bypass certain elements of the picture. In the case of Europe, We might want to see the nation state as a solution, but the nation state is already being partly bypassed by the emerging European military-industrial complex. I'm not arguing there is already a full-fledged system as there is in the United States, but unless we timely act to prevent its emergence, we'll be faced with one in the future, because the EU is working in that direction. There is clear policy being put in place to eliminate borders between different national markets and connections that are exclusive between armed corporations and states. There is a mechanism in place in order to develop military research at the European level. So we need to be aware that these developments are taking place. Not to argue that it's impossible to counter them and war is inevitable. No, of course, that's not the argument. We must be aware of the strengths at the same time while trying to mobilize forces in order to counter the threat. And in the case of the case of Iran, I would argue the threat is serious. And the power of the military-industrial complex is only one element in this situation, but it's an important element. There are other elements in the situation.
No disagreement.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to touch another point in James Millier's very valuable contribution, and that is that I have also worked or supported the Arms Trade Treaty, because the Oxfam and Amnesty International and all that are very, very strongly supporting this treaty, and in the United Nations and elsewhere, and we do a lot of work on arms trade treaty. Actually, I was on the board of Campaign Against Arms Trade. I was one of their board members a long time ago. My contention with arms trade treaty originates from a different angle. That is, that it doesn't go far enough. My arguments are that this treaty says we are okay to sell arms as long as they're regulated, as though they fall under the law, as long as if UK is selling in a legal, like we have got in UK, states that every arms supplier has to have a trade certificate telling the government or the Defense Department that this is not going to rogue states or regimes which the governments will use these armaments against their own citizens. So that's what it is. But you and me know we live in a real world. They always go and get them distributed to all these people, because they go under one exemption or one certificate, and that certificate in the middle of the ocean somewhere is transferred with other certificates, and it's still the people who are getting it gets them. Now, why it doesn't go far enough? My contention is that the arms trade, the treaty should go far enough to say that armaments, it doesn't matter what their size are, it doesn't matter which country produces it. Because the nuclear weapons, as we always say, how can they be safe if UK has got it and US has got it, and now we are trying to attack Iran because we are thinking they have got it. So they are all of a sudden become irresponsible country. But UK, we say, oh no, UK and France are very mature democracies. They're not going to use nuclear weapons and kill a couple of million people. So my contention is, if there is to be a treaty which is very, very desirable, and I'm all in for it, it has to be a ban on total production, sales, and transfer of all weapons. Thank you.
you'd shortly like to comment on this, or you seem to be rather on the same page, so maybe we can...
Quickly, I think the last fifth point that you mentioned in your recommendation is strengthening democracy. So, I mean, besides the national democracy, we have a regional democracy, the European Parliament and the EU. So similarly, if you can strengthen UN in order to put some global governance mechanism in place, it'll be good. Because if you look at the Bretton Woods institutions and the WTO, even the WTO regime does not include arms, because it is right now dominated by vested interests. So they don't want arms to get into it, because if you look at WTO products, when US and many others have monopoly on certain products, they don't want that product to be listed in WTO.
Yeah.
So therefore it's a vested interest. We need a global environment governance. We need a global arms governance, I mean, so there we are, as World Federalists, we are actually fighting for United Nations Parliamentary Assembly, by which there will be a global governance in place to take care of many of these things. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question over here.
Thank you. My name is Khalid Chaudhry, and I'm from International Human Rights Commission. First of all, my compliments for the organizers of this debate. Certainly, it's a light at the end of the tunnel. And of course, this debate is long required. Since Bush and Blair collaborated, started war in Iraq, and then they started war in Afghanistan, which is not anti-terrorism, but it is to produce terrorism. It is to produce more weapons, to sell more weapons, to export more weapons. For years, we have been waiting for debates so that why they conspired, why they collaborated to start war in Iraq. It was not war against the weapons of mass destruction, which they initially they said that Saddam owned them. So this war was started because of their global agenda and global hegemony. And then again, it's energy. Oil, gas, whatever it is. Mr. Mehta, my compliments for you as well, okay, you became a reason of that. You mentioned about 4 Ds. Dutch government is working on 3 Ds, and that is development, diplomacy, and defense. And they are combining, their all efforts into this. Then, Mr. Peter, you mentioned about Pentagon. I still remember a year and a half ago, I went into debate with ex-advisor of Mr. Bush. He mentioned, when he was talking about military or weapons and whatever it is, in the world, he repeated twice that the generals would not let him do this. So who? Mr. Barack Obama. And I stood up and I said, I'm extremely astonished that you're talking about United States of America, where we believe that the president who is resident of this White House is the strongest person. But you are telling us that the generals will not let him do this. So this is the situation that the Pentagon or other countries or weapon-producing countries, they are not going to stop this race. Let me say, this country where we are sitting right now, it is 5th largest, if it is not 5th largest, but it is between 5th and 8th largest weapon exporting country. So it goes to the states and non-states. It goes to the African Civil War lords, and it goes to Asia, and it goes to Latin America as well. All these things are going again. At the end, I have a question for you, as I'm also a member of the SPA. What was the reason of SPA to support F-16's operations in Afghanistan? It's extremely disappointing that, SPA was a party where we could say that, okay, it opposed, I mean, all kind of wars and weaponization of this world. But SP have joined, I mean, the others now. So please let us know why this 180-degree or 190-degree turn. Thank you very much.
So who is it addressed to you?
That is pretty much a misunderstanding. What Mr. Van Bommel had been visiting in Afghanistan, what he noted was that in actual fact, the F-16 pilots were being used in a very roundabout fashion to do things which they weren't supposed to do. He was actually saying, in practice, they are doing what they like. And what he was doing was calling people's attention to that. Of course, the major position of the SP is simply we should withdraw, the mission is no good, the war is no good, there's no point to this mission, and we should get out of there. That's basic. That still remains the main position of the SP.
Actually, if I may say, I attended a debate of this Commission of Foreign Affairs, you know, you're the members of the Foreign Affairs second chambers. I was sitting there last week, and I could hear that. You know, when they were talking about, the foreign minister was sitting over there, and it was extremely clear that it is some sort of green signal from the SP to go ahead.
No, that's an interpretation by the Telegraaf, which is a very right-wing Dutch paper, which was, the Telegraaf was very, very happy to interpret it that way. But it was definitely not what Mr. Van Bommel meant. And he has corrected that if there was confusion this afternoon in a debate here in the Foreign Affairs Committee.
So it should come into the media then?
Oh, yes.
The clarification from the SP. Thank you.
Okay.
There's
I
already
just,
one on the website.
Short reaction?
just on,
Mr. Mehta? Sir, you would like to say something?
media made a mistake.
I'm sorry,
Please ask him.
the
The
media
Telegraaf
make
gave a spin.
a spin?
Yes.
A mistake?
That's a mistake, I would say, yes.
Oh, wow. Well, that's very interesting. But the solution is not, come not from the SP, not from the left to the...
What do you mean the solution?
Well, Mr. Van Bommel, he said the solution is
No, he said reality.
stop the war.
Of course, and he's still saying that. And this has been clarified again and again on the website today. He said it in public. He said it in the Foreign Affairs Committee just now. The basic position of the SP is get out of Afghanistan. There's no point to this war.
Right.
That's it.
Okay, well, maybe we should not get too much into the SP policies, no? You would like to say something, mister?
Yes, I'm just going to comment on a couple of points Khalid Chaudhry made. One is the President of the United States can make decisions independently? Of course not, he can't. Why? Why can't he do it? If you remember the people who have got good memories, back to 2008, Obama won the presidentship on a peace ticket because before him, George Bush had gone to wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And also the American public, because of the money spent, was absolutely fed up with George Bush's policies and lunacy, because he's been rated as the most, on the lowest ladder of the presidents ever in the United States. Till now, we don't know. History might prove him otherwise. But when he came to power, he couldn't fulfill his pledges, could he? He couldn't, because the generals were in force. And you can see the realities, as Carol has been saying, of politics, that some of the Congress and the Senate, part of it is controlled by the Republicans. And probably you know it. If you don't, it will be a revelation to you that when Obama and Medvedev, the president of Russia, had cut a deal to reduce nuclear weapons from 3,000 to the present 1,500. You know how Obama did it? He called all the Republican senators and told them, boys, I'm going to do this, but I will also do something else. I will bring the 21st century bunker buster bombs and mini nukes and others in the next 10 years. And they said, oh, are you going to spend money on that? He said, okay, go and sign the 1,500.
And will improve drones.
And he's done. So in other words, he had the presidency on a peace ticket, but he's proved to be worse off than George W. Bush because he sent the 30,000 reinforcements into Afghanistan, which he dithered, but ultimately bowed down to the military. And then he made more reinforcements in military and weapons, and you very rightly say that they are already on to the 21st century weapons, which are the drones, or what some people may not know what drones are in the audience, unmanned aerial vehicles, in which there is no pilot, but they can, at the same time, they can kill all the same as the other pilot, the ones with the pilots do. Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, yes, very interesting.
Yes.
Shanti has just reminded me
Yes.
that
I think last year
she's very good. She always tells me what I've done wrong
Yes.
in a speech.
There-
so she's reminding me that these drones have not only killed people, but
But
they
they
have
spoil the
upset
happy
funerals,
Yes.
weddings, and many peaceful demonstrations. They have killed these people on the excuse that the drones have been, or the bombs have been, some parts of the country have been bombed because there were terrorists hiding in that part of the world.
80 school children were killed.
And school children were
Like
killed.
80 school children.
Yeah, but
And when the marriage was going on, there was so many people were killed in the marriage because of the drones. And another thing, why he got the Peace Prize from Norway 2 years back, because they said he's going to bring the peace. Instead of that, he was sending more, troops and the more
Absolutely,
civilians to the Afghanistan and the Iraq.
thank you, Shanti.
He hasn't fulfilled his promise. He was given the what you call the Peace Prize to do a peace work in the world. But instead of that, he was sending more troops to Afghanistan. And there was more destructions under the presidency of Obama in Afghanistan and Iraq and in Pakistan.
Thank you.
May I
There are
just
quite some
a
people
small
who would like to
Just,
comment. Yes, Mr. Peter?
By way of support, I entirely agree with the interpretation of Vijay Mehta of the case of Obama. In fact, I think the case of President Obama very well illustrates that the military-industrial complex has enormous power. You started with the detail of the advisor of Bush, who states in blank terms the generals can force their way, they can force the hand of the president. And I think the case of Obama illustrates that. I mean, he was chosen on a peace ticket. And if you look at the level as one single factor, the level of military expenditures, throughout the period of the Bush government, these continue to rise. Under Obama, the same thing has happened. Of course, there is some pressure to try to reduce them now, but up to today, he has not been able to fulfill the wish of the American people to reverse the processes of
This is largely
continuing
true, but there's
increases.
one thing which is quite incorrect. President Obama, in his campaign, made quite clear that he would continue the war with Afghanistan. In fact, one of his key arguments was that Bush made a mistake going into Iraq because those resources were needed to fight in Afghanistan. Afghanistan was the proper target. So I agree with everything you've said about what he's done, but it's not correct that he was fooling people. He was quite clear on that.
In the eyes of the public, he was the representative of peace because he opposed the war in Iraq.
I just
agree
got
with
to.
you.
We
I
have three
would like
questions from the
to-
room.
Yes, let's first do some questions because I see several people,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, and maybe they can ask their questions and then you can say to whom you are addressing your question, and then we can take the next question and the next question, and then the panel can answer in a row.
I would like to remark that in 2008, during the campaign, Obama was very clear in saying the Afghan war is a just war.
Yeah, he was.
Very clear. He was not a peace ticket. He wanted to get rid of Iraq on his own terms. When he was negotiating with Iraq about impunity of American soldiers in Iraq and the Iraqi government refused that, then he was kind of forced to back out. But in Afghanistan, he's still going on very strongly.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. We will take the second question. I'm sorry, sir. I will come back to you. I'll go to this corner first.
Okay, so I'm definitely probably the only American in the room. And I'm very new to this topic, but it would seem that from the conversation, from the debate, that democracy isn't working if Obama doesn't have, if he didn't keep the peace. And we're also assuming that the American voters even know anything about this. That we don't understand the so-called peace that he was supposed to keep to us, to bring to us. I'm 25 years old, and like I said, this is new, and I can definitely speak for the 2,000 plus students that I've interacted with and spoke in front of. Like, we don't know, and it just it's offensive. I don't know. Are you saying that our democracy is not working? Because that is what I'm hearing, right?
That will definitely be answered.
Yeah. A few more questions. We will answer that.
Yeah, actually, I've been working in conflict countries, one after the other. Sri Lanka for 8 years, and now in Afghanistan for 5 years. And I have my colleague with me, Ashish Shah, who is Afghan.